Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome. My name is Dr. Monikah Ogando. I'm so excited that you are here today. We are talking about selling as service, the three shifts to make sale an act of transformation. Now, I want to get an idea of who everybody is in here. Have we all done some level of selling in our business or jobs? Put up one in the chat if you've had to sell something. If you've had to sell an idea, if you've had to sell yourself, if you had to sell a proposal, et cetera, to clients, to peers. All right, always selling. Okay, good. Yes, Matthew, always selling. Right. So one of the things that I have heard a lot in the entrepreneurial world and the business world, et cetera, is the reticence, the resistance that people have to selling. And it's typically because of what we think selling is. Have any of you ever had any kind of resistance to selling? Or are y'all like, nah, I can sell water to a fish? Or are you like, a little resistance? Yeah, it's a little weird. Put up one and put a two in the chat if you're like, yeah, I got a little resistance. I ain't gonna lie. A little bit, a little bit. You have to use your Robert De Niro voice when you say it. So I hate the idea of door to door. Oh, okay. All right. So let's get into why that is. And as we're getting onto how that is, then we'll talk about those shifts that get to be made. And then I want this to be like a dialogue. Okay. So please call and response in the chat. All right. So that we can have this conversation. So the first thing that I wanna say is that part of the reason why we have resistance to sales is because we kind of subconsciously see it as extraction. You know what I mean? That we kind of see it as, I'm going to get something from you. I'm going to get your money. I'm going to get your commitment. I'm going to get your blah, 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 blah. And you're going to buy into who I am. So it feels a little bit like pimp. It feels a little bit like pimping when you have that distinction of extraction, right? That's what pimps do. They extract service, right? If you could shift yourself, if you could imagine the idea that instead of sales being about extraction, it's about stewardship. Hear me out. If selling something, if offering a service, a product, etc., was more about stewardship of the possibility that the person wants, rather than I'm going to extract this resource from you, i.e., money or attention or whatever, then you can really see the possibilities start to open up because people don't buy information. People don't buy widgets. People don't buy a thing. They buy an identity upgrade. And then the supported commitment that comes with that identity upgrade. Let's start there. Let's use that assumption. Because the assumption that sales is extraction is what would have you be reticent to it, that would have you be resistant to the idea of sales. If we shift the assumption from it's not extraction, it's stewardship, okay, and that people don't buy information, they buy an identity upgrade, then you can see how the first shift would be that instead of you being the pitcher, you're pitching an idea, you're pitching a proposal, et cetera, that you're really a guide in terms of this stewardship conversation, right? That you're really a guide here to kind of guide the person to serve the future self and not the present friction. Let me say that again. You're a guide serving the future self of the person that you're selling to, not their present friction. So what that requires is three things. First, you want to diagnose where they are. They may have an idea, and some of you who have done sales training, et cetera, you know this idea of like, people that are problem aware, that are solution aware, and then there are option aware. In other words, they know what their problem is. They wanna explore a particular solution, and now they're just a matter of selecting what provider is going to give them that solution, right? So that's a little bit of how in the sales language, people actually talk about that, right? So you want to diagnose where people are at and then prescribe a particular map or a particular guide or a particular path, etc. And then you co-decide whether it fits for you to be the one that gives them that solution or guides them through that path. Right? Now, one of the steps that I think people miss sometimes is that they do a fantastic job at mirroring the vision, right? But mirroring the possibility of what they want, and they speak into it, and they have the language for it, etc. So what happens is that because you have better language for their vision, they feel really heard and they feel really understood, and it creates a level of trust and a level of visibility that they might not have otherwise have experienced. All right. But here's the part that sometimes people skip. They skip labeling the cost of inaction. Like, what happens if you don't take action on this vision that you see possible for your life, for your business, for your family, for whatever it is that future self that they want, that they're not currently engaged in, right? Because when you label the cost of an action, you make it so painful for them to stay where they are. They have to make a decision, whether it's working with you or not. They're going to have to make a decision. And for some people, tell me if you relate or if you've been through this experience. For some people, the smarter you are, the more finessed that inaction looks. So sometimes, here's where we get clever. Yeah. Sometimes inaction looks like busyness. Inaction sometimes looks like busyness. What do I mean by that? Inaction means you're not taking action towards the possibility that you dream, the vision that you dream, the solution that you're looking for. I'm talking about this, your customer, your client, etc. Right? That's what inaction is. It's not moving you towards the future that you say that you want. But sometimes because you're very clever and because you're very hip to, the tricks and the rackets that sometimes our ego plays on ourselves, it doesn't look like inaction. It looks like, no, but I'm reading the books. No, but I'm going to the conferences. Right? You're taking some kind of action. It's just not taking you where you say you want. Right? And then we blame the action for not producing the results that we want. So you want to replace the idea of like closing somebody on a sale with again, because we're moving from the identity of pitcher to the identity of guide. So instead of closing a sale, what you're doing is confirming fit and commitment. This is where the co-deciding part comes in. You're confirming fit and commitment. Are you really committed to this vision? Because me giving you a map to a thing that you're not going to arrive, that you're not going to get in, is completely irrelevant. What's the point of me giving you a path or a map or strategy, et cetera, if you're not even committed to it, right? So we have to make sure that there's commitment there. And then we have to make sure that am I the one that you're selecting to guide you through this path, to guide you through this journey, right? Because then what that entails is now we have a series of other commitments that become obvious, right? Whether it's procuring payment, whether it's giving them an onboarding journey, whether it's introducing them to the rest of the team, answering a questionnaire, whatever the case may be, right? So I want to give you some language to ease you through that particular part of the conversation. Some of you have sales calls, you may call it discovery calls, commitment calls, etc. One of the things that you want to get clear on is, and one of the things that you want to get clear on is what's their language of identity, meaning how do they identify themselves? How do they process information? And you'll hear how people process information by how they describe what they're interpreting. In other words, if somebody says, here's what I see, that's possible. Or here's what I want to see happen. When they use visual words like that, then you have a pretty good idea. It's an educated guess to say that this person is a visual decision maker versus there are people who are auditory decision makers. What I hear, right, what it sounds like, etc. So you want to mirror that. You want to mirror the language of how they make decisions
If they make decisions by what they see, use visual language. If they make decisions by what they hear, use auditory language. If they make decisions by what like action, kinetic stuff, then use movement language, right? And all you're doing is mirroring themselves back to them. A lot of times, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but a lot of times when you hear yourself coming out of somebody else's mouth, you can check yourself, right? You check yourself like, oh, I didn't know I sounded that ridiculous. Let me fix that. Right? So you want to mirror their language in terms of how they make decisions, and then get them clear about the cost of inaction. If unchanged, the next 90 days, 6 months, whatever it looks like, X, Y, Z. Get them to agree to that. Get them to say, it might not, you might be wrong. It might not look like that. So get again, you're co-deciding, right? So make sure that you're on the same sheet music. And then create consent. Would you like my recommendation? Would you like to hear what I have to say about that? Or what's possible about that? If they say yes, great. If they say no, all right, well, it was nice talking to you. And sometimes that'll be shocking to somebody who's like, wait, what? It's over? Yeah. I mean, I have a recommendation. You don't want to hear it, but what else do you want to talk about? Okay. When you can be that clear and that like charge neutral, then you immediately put the ball back in somebody else in that person's court to say, how do you want the rest of this conversation to go? They are expecting you to kind of like pitch them. No, I'm not going to pitch you. You have a decision to make. I can guide you through that. I have a recommendation, but I respect your consent or lack thereof. Right? So that's shift number one is shifting the identity from pitcher. You're not pitching a sale. It's actually guiding them through a decision. Okay. Shift number two is shifting the value from features to transformation math. What do I mean by that? You want to quantify the before and after gap in terms of time, money, energy, status. Sometimes when folks are selling an idea, a service, etc., they get kind of mired down in the features. Let's say, for example, you're selling a coaching program. Yeah, so you get, a weekly call and it's 60 minutes and we're in a group and you get the recording if you're not there in person, those are features. What I want you to shift into is quantifying the before and after in terms of time, money, energy, or status. In other words, you're spending this much now, you'll save that much after we're done. Or you'll make this much after we're done. Or it's costing you this much in time. You're spending 3 hours to produce this result. With my service or with our help or with our guidance, etc., you're going to cut down that into 30 minutes. I'm thinking, for example, of people who do social media services, right? Or or your website, or any kind of like service done for you service like that. Right? So you want to tie each program component of whatever you're selling, whether it's a service, done for you service, or it's a coaching program, consulting, etc. You want to tie each component of your program or your service to a blocked risk or an unlocked asset. Because now the price of your service is a fraction of that captured value. It's not a sticker point, right? I had a client who was a divorce attorney, and the way that we worked her language in terms of why she charges what she charges is because if you were to do this by yourself, it would cost you this much in time, it would cost you this much in mistakes, it would cost you this much in cost of in opportunity costs, right? And you would end up, in many times, just because of lack of experience, getting the short end of the stick in negotiating your divorce. Whereas if you had somebody who not only is an expert in it, but also knows the courts, knows the judges, knows the other attorneys, et cetera, because I've been in this area, I've been in this county for a while, and I know the shortcuts and I know how to get you what you want, on top of negotiating skills, then you'll get double, triple what you would have gotten by yourself in half the time. That's why it costs $500. So you want to move from features to transformation math, focusing that on the time, the energy, the money, the status that you are able to give them or that you're able to save. Okay.
Shift number 3. So the first shift is identity. The second shift is value. The third shift is consent. Moving from pressure to powerful invitation. When you assume already that you are dealing with somebody who is powerful, who is sovereign, who has agency over their own decisions, you respect their autonomy. And you operate from that. There's no manipulation required, just an invitation. So that autonomy increases commitment. They might not even trust themselves to make powerful decisions, but you having that standard of, I trust you to make powerful decisions for yourself, kind of like elevates the conversation. And that urgency, whatever urgency you may have about, we start this program in a week or whatever, that urgency should be truthful, not theatrical. Sometimes we have this FOMO, like, you get it now because we only have 3 seats left. Dang good and well, this is a digital program. You have 1,000 million seats left, right? So don't create theatrical urgency, create truthfulness. And then set that decision container. In other words, in terms of timeline, in terms of criteria, in terms of the next step, because you want to normalize discernment. Normalize discernment. In other words, the surface objections are really just unmet needs for information. When you hear somebody pause, when you hear somebody say, yeah, but, that's not a no. That's an unmet need for information, for permission, for clarity, right? So you offer a binary next action with clear cost of delay. What does that mean? That means, is it a yes or a no? If it's a yes, then we have this next action. And then is that a yes or a no? Then we have the next action, right? Once again, I'm going to use the would you like my recommendation as the first binary action. Would you like my recommendation? If they say no, okay, well, it was nice talking to you. That's the next consequence of that, right? This is where the no leads to. And so when you can shift from the consent, from pressure to powerful invitation, they're being pulled forward by their vision. Not your theatrics, not, false urgency, not FOMO, etc. Now, let me give you some hacks that I've used in the past. Giovanni will probably call it poetry because he always tells me that I'm kind of poetic in that sense. But here's how you can kind of alchemize any kind of objections that you might get in your sales conversation. Sometimes one of the most common objections that people have, well, really, if you think about it, they kind of fall into 3 categories: either money, time, or fear. Money, time, or fear. What does that mean? I can't afford it, or I have to check with my husband or my wife or my team. And this is more expensive than I expected. Those are the money objections, obviously. Or this is going to take too much time, or, I need this done quickly, et cetera. Those are time objections. Fear objections are really about like trusting themselves or trusting you to create the result that you say that you can provide, right? So in order to alchemize those objections, you should name them. I like to call it the Eminem school of handling objections. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, 8 Mile, but he was a battle rapper, and he's white and he's from a trailer park and his mom's a drug addict. Like he's just like perfect for clowning, right? And so what he did was when he got up there to battle rap and he went first, he named all the things that you could use to clown him. He named them first. So when his competitor got up there, he had nothing. I already said my mama was a drug addict. I already said I live in a trailer park. I already said that my clothes are dirty because we can't wash them because we don't have money for the laundromat. I already said that I go hungry some days. I already said I failed out of school. What you gonna say now? So that's the Eminem school of handling objections, as I call them. So when you actually name the objection before they name it, it kind of takes away the of it, the elephant in the room kind of conversation that people have about it. Language around that. Again, offer them a binary next action. Here's an example. So what I'm seeing here is that we have 2 paths. we can either have you enroll, let's say that you're selling a coaching program. We can either have you enroll in of the program by such and such date, or pause and accept that this is just going to take you 3 years. Which one aligns with your principles? By the way, the 3 years is not something that you're pulling out of your butt. This is something that they've said. This is going to take me this time if I do nothing, or this is the cost of inaction. So you're just quoting them when you're using that binary next action. So if I were to give you homework, by the way, you guys, this is like a 3-day sales course that I'm giving you 30 minutes. Okay. So thank you for listening as fast as I'm speaking. So if I were to give you a homework assignment, I would say list all of the objections that you have ever had, all the reasons why somebody said no to you or postponed it or ghosted you, or et cetera, and then alchemize them. Alchemize them by what's the actual no here? Because when somebody says that this is too expensive, or this is costing more than I anticipated, et cetera, compared to what, right? Because if we're comparing, to use the divorce attorney's example, if we're comparing $500 an hour, and let's say that the divorce takes 30 hours, right? That's 15 grand. Okay, but you're gonna get $1 million settlement, let's say, or $100,000 settlement. Will you pay 15,000 to get 150,000? That's a 10x return. So what are we comparing it to in terms of being expensive? Right? So you want to list all of the objections that you may have heard in your history of selling anything. And then I want you to start alchemizing them by using that binary next action that I was talking about, and by getting them to make a decision on that particular thing. And you'll never go wrong with asking questions. I always say questions are the creative acts of intelligence. If somebody says, for example, well, it's going to take a lot of time. Yeah. Imagine that you've already spent 3 years mulling over this thing, and you're willing to spend another 6 months to not get the same results. That's a lot of time. 6 months are going to pass regardless. 3 years are going to pass regardless. Are we going to go 6 months and not have the results, or are we going to go 6 months and actually get this done? What are we talking about, right? So you're reframing their objection in that sense. Okay, I've talked a lot. I want to hear what questions, what comments do you have before I give you my final form. Questions, comments? Yes, Giovanni.
Well, this is great and quite timely for me. One of I'm always poking at this beast of the way I heard the conversation today was around closing, creating a conversation so that it can close.
Mm-hmm.
And that person can make a decision. And one of the things that I certainly do a lot is that I create possibility for where there is a product or a service. I'm super good at exciting people, at creating possibility, and terrible at something I'm hearing with you today, which is somewhat creating a context of, well, what happens if you don't take the action?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like the way I see it right now is like, I am afraid to remind you what you've been dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to have diabetes, or you already have diabetes, and I really don't want to remind you of what that it looks like for you. I really don't want to do that. Let's talk about what's on the other side, because I know you're going to lose your leg and your eyes, but you already know that. So why should I remind you of that? You have created a tolerance around that, and I know, and you know it, but I don't really want to poke at that because I think it's unfair for you. So let's just talk about possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell in this conversation that that fear I have of poking a little bit about what that person is already dealing with, certainly it's a gap for me to close, is what I'm hearing in this conversation. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I had someone say, a coach I had once, he said to me, it occurs to me that you don't care about them.
Mm.
You care about your program, not about them.
Mhm.
And but I haven't had my transformation yet. I'm not a great closer at all. I mean, I'm not terrible because I'm good at what I do, but not really a good one, I would say.
Yeah, what I would add to what your coach said is that maybe not so much that you don't care about them, but you care more about your comfort than you do about their action.
Yeah, something like that. Like,
Mhm.
these are blind spots, right? And go easy
Sure.
on me. But
Yes.
but
Yes.
certainly I feel that way. I can see that my comfort level between me and a prospect somehow is more important than their well-being or their predictable future. Given that we're a good fit, right? Given that we're a good fit, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Hmm. So
Yeah.
let's use this framework for that particular objection, right? Like the objection is like, yeah, but it's uncomfortable to have to talk to people about the cost of inaction. Okay. So do you just want them to sit in their mediocre results? No, of
Yeah.
course
So
not. Of course not. Yeah, I want them to feel
I
how
find myself, you know how you just use, are you comfortable with them having mediocre results?
Mhm.
The answer is no, I'm not comfortable. But what you just did, as using the word mediocre and creating that uncomfortness,
Yeah.
and that I I know this is kind of we're just playing here. I felt like, ooh, I wouldn't use that word. Oh my gosh, that's so mean.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. So, but no, I'm not comfortable. I mean,
See,
no, that's the reason why my life is
that's
like
the
that.
point, right? That it's like, am I so committed to your possibility that I'm willing to be uncomfortable, or that I'm willing to be disliked, or that I'm willing to be awkward, right? Is your possibility worth my awkwardness? That's a decision that we make when we enter into these kinds of conversations. And sometimes, and the same reason that you don't say that to yourself in your own discomfort is the reason why they haven't made the result, they haven't changed the results that they say that they want. So if you
Yeah,
can just
yeah.
imagine that your willingness to sit in your discomfort is the key to them getting the result that they want, perhaps that will create a more possibility for you to be able to sit in it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I wanna say something, and I know Sorel was going to say something, and time is going to fly. It's going to fly. But I love to hear what you think of this. One of the aspects that I deal with, not right or anything, I'm just saying something here, is that I don't want to be too straight about their predictable future if they don't take action, because I have felt before that when someone who is providing a service for me and somewhat leaves me insulted, then I go somewhere else to get that service, even though that person opened up the wound
Mm-hmm.
for me to look. I'd rather go see someone else because I didn't like how they made me feel. I didn't like they didn't have any tactfulness with me. So
Mm-hmm.
they're like, no, I don't want to. So unconsciously, I don't want to do that to people. Like, I don't want to open up a wound, hurt you. And then they're like, well, you're a jerk. I'm going to go with Matthew over there because he's nicer. So anyway, I wanted to add that to the conversation.
So, this is where the shift number 3 becomes so important, which is consent, right? So one of the ways that I sometimes have dialogue this or have language this is I'm sometimes like a dog with a bone in terms of like I won't let a person, like once I see a possibility, I won't let it go. And sometimes that comes across as being
intrusive or invasive or kind of like overbearing, et cetera, et cetera, I'm going to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Is that okay with you? Like getting the consent for that, so that by the time that we get to the awkward part of the conversation, you've already been forewarned, right? And this is hello, surprise, this is where we get awkward, but what are we gonna do? We're gonna move through it, right? So again, we're always assuming that the person is in full autonomy of the conversation. You know what I mean? You're kind of assuming that they're gonna think you're rude. You don't know that. You haven't even created consent yet.
I'm really good at asking for forgiveness instead of permission.
There
So
we
I
go.
like that.
Yeah.
Terrell,
Yeah. So you guys have taken it, from the beginning to the end, and I love it. Dr. Monikah, I want to come back to something you said earlier. You said being the steward of the person's transformation, and connecting it back to the question you posed this morning. What are the 3 shifts to make sales a transformative act? So are you saying that regardless of what you're selling, regardless of who you're in a conversation with, you enter with one agenda and one agenda only? I'm here to transform your life. And I'm giving my heart, my soul, and everything to that. So the conversation we're having now is for that. So I'm going to go anywhere and everywhere. How do you twist yourself to be the steward and disabuse yourself of what Gio was talking about earlier? God, I'm concerned that you're going to be offended. God, I'm concerned that you're going to go somewhere else if I offend you or if I push too hard. So I'm seeing that at the crux of everything that you've discussed today, it's that initial or that fundamental transformation, that who I am for you in any sales conversation is the steward of your transformation. How do you make that shift for yourself every time?
So, one of the philosophies, one of the commitments that I have in my own consulting work is that when you get that it's not about the money, then it can be about them. You've heard me say that. And what I mean by that is when you get that this is about people's lives, when you get that it's about people's whatever it is, right? Relationships or, their own abundance, especially B2B people that sell their business is to sell to other businesses and so forth. When you can get that what they're looking for is a particular result so that their business, their relationship, their health or whatever will flourish, then the vision is bigger. Your service, your product, your program is just a mechanism for that agenda. And I'm on your team about your agenda for the result that you say that you want. Now, in the course of the sales conversation, we may both discover that I'm not a good fit. In which case, let's both of us get off the phone. I'm not going to waste your time. This is a non-renewable resource, right? But if I'm committed to that transformation, I'm so committed to you having what you want that I'm willing to pretzel myself into whatever it is that needs to happen in order for you to have what you want, then that takes the consent conversation, the value conversation, the identity conversation to another level. That's fundamental, yes. Because, hold on, let me finish this thought. That because if it's about, I just want you to buy what I have, it's such a reductive conversation. You're leaving so much more possibility and relationship and intimacy and trust on the table when it just becomes about a transaction. Right. And so when you can be bigger than that, then the transaction comes along with it, as opposed to leaving everything else on the table.
Yeah. And sometimes the transaction is with me, and sometimes the transaction is with somebody else. And being the steward, one can be in that space where it's not about the transaction, and some will stick and some won't. But either way, I have been the steward of your transformation in that conversation.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And,
Thank you.
And we have to, you're welcome. And we have to get clear on whether or not that's a value for our companies. I mean, do I want to be the kind of person who is on their team about the transformation that they say that they want, or do I just want this transaction? No judgment on either decision, but you have to be clear about where you stand so that you know how to approach that conversation.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. O.
Okay, so I know that we're over time, but I wanted to give you one last little piece. Is that okay if we go over time?
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to give you a 90-second closing script. 90 seconds. And again, I'm going to give you the outline of it, and then you work it out in terms of your own language and your own services, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the 4 parts. So write this down. Of course, my name is Monikah. I love having M names for everything. So the first part is mirror. I'm gonna tell you how this works out, but I'm gonna do the 4 parts first. Mirror. Second part, mechanism. Third part, map. Fourth part, map. So mirror, mechanism, map, math. What does that look like in a script? Mirroring is, so what I hear you saying is that you want to lose 30 pounds in 6 months and be done with the pain that you have on your legs. Mirror that. Okay, great. So this, let's say, I don't know what to call it. I'm using like a fitness trainer kind of situation. So this 6 months to your best self. I don't know. What this program does is that it actually gives you a step-by-step of like your nutrition and your working out, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to think about it. So you're actually naming the mechanism and removing whatever friction they have. So what has stopped them from getting the result they want. That's the mechanism, right? How we do that. That's the script. How we do that. Now you're about to get into the math. Is that week 1, we do X, Y, Z, week 2, we do blah, blah, blah. So you're giving them quick wins and milestones with that map. Quick wins and milestones, not features, not features. Quick wins, milestones, not this is how many calls you get and this is how long the coaching session is. No. Quick wins, milestones, right? Math. So at those current numbers, that means that you're going to, bring your cholesterol down to XYZ in these many weeks, or that when you go back to your physical with your doctor, that you're going to get a clean bill of health, or that you will in these many weeks or these many months, you will be off of your cholesterol medication, etc. So you're turning it into math. You're turning it into objective, quantifiable, observable data. That's the script. And then you be quiet. Because then what's going to happen is that the next thing that they're going to say is like, oh, okay, how do we get started? Oh, great. So the investment is XYZ. If you start today, then this is the first step. How do you want to move? You're asking for consent, right? Binary next action. So that's the script. Mirror, mechanism, map, math. And then you silent. Let them tell you what the next step is. Has this been useful? I know we went through over time. Put a 1 in the chat if it was useful. Put a 2 in the chat if I just wasted your time. Because that's feedback for me.
I love it. I was taking notes.
You were taking notes. Oh, awesome. Good deal. Okay, yay, all the ones are coming. Great. So obviously, so much more that I can say about this. Like I said, I just broke down a 3-day training into 30 minutes. Well, 40 actually, 40 minutes. If you want more, if you want to stay in contact with me, you can go to monikahogando.com/the huddle, since we're talking about the huddle here. And I'll be giving you some more resources. Because once, Sorrel and Giovanni, when we started together, we were talking about the daily huddle, and I was on Thursday, Spiritual Matters Thursday, and we were talking about spiritual matters, right? And you may not know, if you've been here for a minute, you may not know that yes, okay, spiritual and Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and everything, but your girl is a business consultant. You know what I mean? And so a lot of times what happens is that people think business and spirituality don't mix. And in my mind, I'm bilingual. I speak both of them. It's like, you know how people sometimes speak Spanglish? I speak Spanglish all the time. And this is what I want for the business leaders that I serve, is for you to be able to just move between business and spirituality. Like, you're not picking one camp over the other. You're moving effortlessly through both of them because your spirituality serves how you show up as a leader, right? Edilberto says, Oh, great. Thank you. If today's conversation sparks something and you don't let it stop there, that's great. Leadership Huddle. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you being here.
I put your link in the bottom, at the bottom too.
Put my link. Okay. Did you do that? Or?
The one that says you're here from the Leadership Huddle is from Monikah.
Ah, okay, perfect. Gracias. Viste, Spanglish right there. That's how you want to flow with your sales. Awesome.
Awesome, Dr. Monikah. Well, do your thing and close us out.
Do we still do our 7? Do we still do our PowerPoint?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Listen, so basically, I want you to be the best self that you are. And we have these 8 principles to do that. Eat plant-based, eat more plant-based, eat and love your trees. Get yourself at least, I say, 9 hours of sleep. I don't know what y'all do with 7 hours, but if you can get 9, that's even better. Stress less. Move your body. Remember that twerking is a spiritual exercise. Twerking is a kundalini raising exercise. I don't care what anybody says. Laugh like we just did, right? And I've always said, I'm skipping some, but I'm going to get to the one that I love the most, which is always audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. When you audit your assumptions, you become a much more powerful stand for the possibility that people learn through.
And when all else fails, go sell something.
Yeah. When in doubt, focus out. Love it. Thanks, everybody.
Make it a great day.
Thanks.